life for brands is so hard because even before the brand is successful, the brand has to make a decision. Do we want to be direct response in our messaging, or do we want to do brand marketing? And this decision has to be made right at the inception of the brand, because that is going to be our identity. We can't have two identities. And I think when founders are confronted with this, they naturally choose brand marketing. And the reason for that is they recognize that direct response is successful. There's lots of companies that are very good at direct response, but there is the direct response has a reputation. It's kind of like essentially like hard sales, right? It's effective, but do I really want to be a pushy salesperson? Versus brand marketing is much more subtle, and it's less kind of calculated, and it's more about here's who we are and here's what the brand is all about. And so founders make a decision to kind of right at the start of the brand, they say we're going to go with brand marketing. Now, as the brand grows, this they run into problems because their performance marketing team realizes that the just the brand messaging, it might work for many audiences but doesn't actually work for all audiences. And especially for an audience that is skeptical, they, just the brand messaging seems very self-indulgent, and they struggle with this. And so they come to the CEO and say, listen, we have to have more direct response ads. Or maybe they might even run an experiment and show success, but the CEO is like, wait a minute, I still can't implement this because I have to have one identity. And so I can't have a split personality. So I'm going to stick with the brand marketing side of the the aesthetic. But imagine if there was a way for us to, for that same brand, for those two personalities to exist at the same time. And I think there's a way to do that. So the way to think about it is that, imagine they come to your product page, and on your product page you always default to brand marketing, right? Default to your brand identity, because that is the identity that most of your audiences will relate to, because that's what your SEO marketing is all about. But on this page itself, create these kind of smart mechanisms, smart filters to for people to self identify themselves. So if through their body language they're not responding to your brand marketing, if you can figure that out and then show them this alternate message, only then though. So if someone comes to the page and you can clearly make out they're engaged with their brand messaging, they're leaning in with interest, they're going through your images, they're reading your description, they're doing everything that you want them to do, that's great. But if they're doing some things that, like, let's for example, they're scrolling quickly, or if they're kind of like skipping past a bunch of your content, that might be an indication that they're really not interested in your brand messaging and they want to understand specifically what makes you special. And if you can identify that, you can show them alternate content. And in this alternate content, you can be much more direct response and talk about what you do in a much more direct response way. But you're not showing them by default. It's kind of like you have these two personalities. You start off with one, and then if based on their behavior patterns, you recognize that they are someone who would probably who's not responding to brand marketing, you show them then this alternate message. And by doing that, you are essentially maximizing conversion rates for both of these audience sets on the same page. So this can absolutely be done. And if you know my process, you know that this is what we do. But if you don't know my process, just drop me a comment or tell me, and I'll show you an example of how we coexist direct response and brand marketing. And there's one other thing over here. Even when the user comes to the page and they reject the brand marketing, and we then show them the alternate direct response marketing, we make it a point to have the messaging be kind of branded still. So it's kind of almost like direct response light. So it's not hardcore direct response like an infomercial. It's kind of like a hybrid, but it's a direct response light. This way, if someone accidentally gets to the direct response message, they don't feel like, oh, these guys are saying two entirely different things. So we say it in slightly different ways. Just the tonality has shifted, but the content is pretty much the same. It's a very, very effective strategy. What do you think about this general approach? I'd love to know your thoughts.